During a high school class project, my teacher told me it's unrealistic being a CEO. It's been my dream to be a CEO since I was 10. So I told her, it is realistic. Follow me on my journey to learn what it takes to become a CEO. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Realistic CEO podcast. Today I'm here with Tucker. How are you doing today, Tucker?
Good, man. Honored to be talking to you.
Thank you for
Love
coming
the space, love the vision.
Thank you.
Love everything.
Appreciate that. Before we get started, I wanted to thank Urban Coworks for having this space to allow us to interview. It's a great space. If you want to check it out and find out an office space for yourself, go on to urbancoworks.com to learn more information. For the first question that I want to ask you, Tucker, is can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what is a multi-franchise owner?
Absolutely. So franchising in general is when you use an existing business model and you sign up for certain territories or a territory within that business model or brand, like Crumble, PLAYA Bowls, Dunkin' Donuts, Subway. They've even got fitness ones now like Stretch Lab and all those types of models. And then when you get designated a territory and you independently open up your own local shop, you do own that local shop. You make your own LLC. You're just using the business model, the business plan, the marketing, the technology, and plugging into that existing system and serving the community with a big brand, but from a local unit. Yeah. So I have a couple business partners that run. We have 7 licenses right now. We have 4 Crumbles open, 2 PLAYA Bowls open, and 1 more Crumble building.
Nice.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your journey to how you got to where you are today?
Me personally? Yeah. Grew up, born in upstate New York, lived in Connecticut my whole life. And after high school, I thought I was going to be a graphic designer. That's what me and Josh were just talking about. But you guys have a lot more patience with the editing and the tediousness of that type of creation. But yeah, once I got out of Cheshire and saw more of the world, I was like, wow, I can definitely do something different than I always thought in high school. So me picking that graphic design major was from a very kind of limited perspective, limited exposure to the world. Once I opened my eyes to what was being offered and what was available, I just became interested in so much more. And so I ended up switching my major to psychology, coming back home from Philadelphia that one year, my freshman year at college. And I wanted to learn about people more because I knew whatever path I decided to go, people were going to be the center of it. And so that was just like the segue. Ended up dropping out of school after a couple semesters of community classes, but I never wanted to stop learning. So I just got pretty aggressive on educating myself online. And the mindset in that shift was like, I don't want to stop learning. It was like, I just want to get paid to learn what I want to learn at the pace I want to learn it, instead of paying and going in debt for a curriculum that's pre-planned by someone else that's not as customized to my interests and needs and my pace. So I, again, just didn't want to stop learning, but I'd rather get paid to learn what I want my way than pay someone to learn one thing that I may not use. So that was my shift there. Best decision I ever made for me personally, not trying to over-influence anybody to do this, but just worked out where I could learn the way I wanted to learn by dropping out. And one thing I did to hedge my lack of education was try to get a little gritty. And what I mean by that is I dove right into full commission sales after being in like the food industry. Since I was 15, I was like bussing tables, making sandwiches, waiting tables, all that sort of stuff. But when I dropped out, I knew I needed to ramp up my experience and my learning. I just knew that sales, based on what I heard from parents around and watching things online, that more CEOs come from the sales department than from any other department. And sales is very people oriented. I'm a talker. So it was a natural transition that served my need at that time to accelerate my growth. And so I knocked doors for a solar company in Vivint. They're now merged with Sunrun. It's the biggest residential solar company in the country and possibly the world. I don't really know. But I did 2 years of waking your parents up from their nap saying, yeah, if you let me rent space on your roof, I can get you off the power company. I can get you 10% lower of an electric bill locked in for 20 years instead of God knows what with the rates. So I was a 22-year-old kid going to homes with people that had raised a family and all this more life experience and saying, hey, you know, this house you've worked so hard for and done all your life in, you should listen to me what to do with your roof. And so that to me was a catalyst to condense a ton of learning into a short period of time. So besides dropping out, doing door-to-door sales was my next best decision, career-wise and learning-wise. It taught me how to regulate myself physically and mentally as much as it did about psychology and sales itself, because your heart's pumping when you're knocking a door and you don't know what's on the other side of it. And you're so young at that point, and you don't make a dollar unless you get a deal. So there's no paycheck unless somebody signs a 20-year contract for these ugly things on their roof. So that was a whole lot of fun. That was a big piece of the story getting here. And then after 2 years of that, I had my fix of it. It served its purpose for me. I wanted to figure out what was next, get back into the food industry, waiting tables again. And in my early 20s, around the same time I dropped out and everything, I wanted to just clean up my lifestyle, build some more habits that really served my future. And so I started getting really into meditation. I came home from North Carolina, a year I spent there after my first year in Philly. And yeah, just needed to swap some bad habits for some good ones, and ones that cleared my head, ones that brought me into a good awareness of myself and put me in a good state. And I found transcendental meditation, learned that, got pretty deep into it, was telling everybody in the world, trying to get everybody on it. So when I got out of sales, I had been meditating for years, was super passionate about it, was holding guided meditations on donation based at a random little hippie store in Wallingford, Connecticut, in transition after sales. And just randomly there, the lady who worked the front desk knew a franchise owner. She knew that I wanted to be in the wellness space after sales and knew that I wanted to own my own thing. Both my parents, by the way, worked for themselves. My mom's had a salon in our basement growing up, and then eventually out on Main Street in town, and has a travel team for weddings. So she's worked for herself for decades now. My father is an old school headhunter recruiter. So he's in the recruiting field. So this lady knew that I wanted to be my own boss and be in the wellness space. And she knew the Elements Massage franchise owner that wanted to step away from the day-to-day. So while I was running those meditations at that shop, she connected us, and that's how I ended up managing 2 franchise locations for Elements Massage in Connecticut. So it went from graphic design school to psychology, door sales, and meditation got me into franchise management. And I was still playing basketball with my boss from the solar company, Troy. He's my business partner now.
Whoa.
So on Wednesday nights, we'd play basketball. He knew I wanted to do my own thing. And he knew from playing basketball and chatting together that I was managing franchises. And he found Crumble, and he was like, hey, I need to get some of these locations because all the money I'm making in solar, I need to put it somewhere smart. And he's got an amazing eye for businesses, and the guy is just like a winner in his blood. So he just felt like Crumble was a win, and he needed somebody to operate it. We had built a relationship over 7 years or so, and he was like, all right, you want to be my operating partner? And that's how I got into franchising. I probably dragged that a bit, but
that was
wanted
cool
to capture.
Story. That was a cool
Yeah.
story. That you end up going, your boss at the solar company is now your business partner. So how important was it to make sure that your relationship was good to a point where he was like, okay, I like Tucker, I actually do want to work with him now. So like, how did that make you feel to know that your boss believed in you so much that you end up turning into his partner?
Yeah, honestly, I get emotional thinking about that. It's the most powerful thing in the world to just build a connection with somebody that resonates to that level. The trust, like you're saying, and just like how well fit can you guys see each other going through ups and downs and challenges and taking risk like that together. Like, it's big stuff, right? So it makes me feel incredible. Like, I honor the trust that he's put in me and the risk that he's taken with me more than almost anything in my life. And everybody hears this all the time, but it's worth emphasizing, right? That just relationships are everything. Like, the whole point of a business is to contribute to someone, and we don't contribute well to others if we don't feed the relationship that we have with ourselves and with our close ones very well. Like, it's hard to be mismanaging those and then serve the community well. Another angle on that whole principle is people are like, a lot of the times it's more who you know than what you know. I always think it's a super balance of both. It's like a dosage of everything, but that saying lives this long because of how much truth it holds, right? So just being in proximity with Troy, sharing my vision for myself with Troy, not holding back on expressing myself, and showing what my values and principles are, and that I would treat opportunity with care. Like, I never knew we would end up being business partners or anything. I just knew I liked to hear him talk. I knew he was a winner, and I liked playing basketball, and it just was pretty organic from all that.
So you said he's a winner and he's seen the vision with Crumble and like,
Yeah.
it's a very good franchise. We should get into it. What was it about Crumble that he's seen that made you come aboard?
The modern slickness of the aesthetic inside the shop itself, the innovative, unique idea of the menu changing every week, capturing interest. This world moves faster than ever, right? So he just caught that it would keep people's attention more than many other things in like a food or dessert space. You don't really see menus fully swap out ever in any type of food spot or business model. So the attention grabbing nature of it, the aesthetic and the cleanliness of the physical space themselves, the power of the branding and the marketing, like it had already started to poke its head into virality. He caught it pretty early, so it was even before it went viral. And he's from Utah, where it's a breeding ground of franchises. It's like a mini Silicon Valley. There's so many franchises that just pop, that originate there and are like a test market to see if they are worth going national. So all those factors combined for him to catch it. So yeah, the branding, the marketing, the business model itself, he sniffed it out early, and all those things made it look like a rocket ship to him, and he jumped right on.
So what about PLAYA Bowls? How did you get into that franchise as well?
Yeah, similar. It's funny, aesthetic comes out first in my mind a lot. It's like when you get a first impression of a space, does it feel like it has that it factor? I think that's one of the filters that Troy really attends to very well, is can you read the vibe in a space to the point where you can sense whether it has that it factor or not based on the quality of the build out, obviously the flavor of the product once he tried it, looking at their social and seeing what their reputation is and the type of engagement they have from their following. We were happy to do something healthier to balance out the moral carbon footprint that we've got with the frickin' sugar bombs. Yeah, he just got really excited about our success in the first few crumbles because we were first to market. That, by the way, being first to market is so huge in getting us to where we have and keeping that winning strong, like grabbing the right real estate before anybody else does and signing onto the brand before most people do is a lot of times make or break, right? In our portfolio, we have mostly winners, but we had some quick losers on some locations. A couple locations down south in Connecticut aren't as fruitful as you'd hope it to be, would not be put in that winner category, even though that was part of our early land grab. That's a huge factor. So a little tangent there, but yeah, I think I captured like the whole idea of how PLAYA came into it as well.
So you said you guys have a lot of winners, but you also have some losers.
Yeah.
So for the losers, do you cut your losses early or do you try to make it work? How does that work?
For sure. So yeah, when you have enough to support yourself or just the loss and the risks are too heavy and too hard to turn around, there's like gaining momentum back seems either lost or less worthy of your attention than your other projects. Like that, those things created the ability to make a pretty quick decision. So Norwalk, for example, we had to shut down either just before or just after a year. just because we would have had to put like one or two people another full-time job worth of extra energy, attention, and capital investment into turning it around. There were a lot of locations on the shoreline and some of the operational stuff that didn't play well into hedging the saturated area. Like, it combined for the fact that the ball was rolling too far in the wrong direction, and we had to build West Springfield and manage the winners. So we cut that, like I said, pretty quick, either right before or right after a year, and that's into the couple hundred thousands of a loss very quickly. Like, almost, yeah, I don't want to get too specific on numbers, but heavy. And then our other store, Milford, it's like a break-even store. So that one pays its bills and has a couple bucks left over sometimes, and sometimes needs a little bit of a help from another store. Things that play into a decision on when to cut it is like, what other projects do you have access to that you can allocate your time and attention to? How bad is the loss? How hard is it to turn around? And then other logistics, like what kind of strings attached you have with real estate, with franchise agreements, that type of stuff. Those can hold you into a spot for longer than you want to be. But yeah, it ended up being a phenomenal decision to cut Norwalk super quick, because we can go and focus on winners again, maximize the things that work. Because even if we spent all those resources bringing the momentum back and doing twice as good as it was is either breaking even or just over. So why spend 80 hours a week between two people getting a failing store to break even, instead of cutting it out and then going to find 2-3 more winners with that same 80 hours a week, 5 more winners. So just comparing what you have access to and what's worth your time.
So you talked earlier how you got in early with Crumble, like you found it early.
Yep.
So you talked about how when you're early, it's a risk, but also there's a high risk, high reward type of thing. So for you, how did that work for you? And that's definitely a must have.
For sure. So that comes down to, there's a lot of people who would come at those decisions from a huge data standpoint. For us, it was pretty intuitive, getting a read on the brand, looking at data points like the social engagement, and you get the franchise disclosure document and you see what the average unit volume is, the AUV, and see if that looks like something that will support you in the rewards that you need based on the investment and everything. Like, it tells you this is how much it costs to build and launch a store, and this is how much revenue you should be making per year based on the previous year's unit volumes. And yeah, after looking at all that stuff, balancing the data and the intuition, we were willing to take that early risk because of the instinctual just feeling that the brand had momentum, that it was a sticky idea that would expand. Yes, and same risk reward kind of idea with the early adopters of solar. When I would go into a neighborhood and there weren't that many panels in the town for the homeowner I'm talking to refer to and say, oh, that's like normal. Yeah, like I'm open to that idea. They didn't have, as being in the early adopter phase, they're like, I don't know if I want to take all that risk. I don't know what these panels are going to do to my roof. I don't know what the power company's going to do. I don't even know why I would go away from the power company. So that's a risk for a homeowner. But the people who did it got the reward the same as with these locations. Like the people who got panels, who got good sun early in the game, like they have their rate locked in at 13.5% when people are paying like 30% now. And even if you get solar, like no way are you getting close to 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour for your electricity. So that principle that you're talking about carries through franchising in every market, right? Yeah, like we didn't know if our instincts were going to play out the way we saw them with Crumble, just betting on those early locations. But we opened the first one in Connecticut. It was Manchester in 2021, right before Christmas. So there was no proof. A lot of people wait till there's proof. But if you wait till there's proof, like the people who were there before you had the access to the prime spots. So it was just a matter of going with the gut and trusting those instincts.
So yeah, I want to talk about that. You talk about the right spots, and you got to find the right audience to fit your spot. So how are you going about when it comes to picking your location where you're placing these franchises?
For sure. Again, I'll just highlight our bias. We're a good balance of putting spreadsheets together, looking at demographics, talking to real estate agents, and looking at numbers, but it's a lot of feel. It's a lot of just like getting a sense of the communities, talking more to locals about which towns have what type of traffic, have what type of character, archetype, target market type stuff. And the biggest thing, to be honest, is when you look at a plaza's data, it's like the frequency of traffic, like how many cars pull in and pull out of there per year. That's the biggest determining factor of the volume of a franchise in many cases. But you do see cases where you have the traffic volume, but you do not get the sales. And then you're looking at what type of person is creating that traffic. Does this type of person match the brand? That type of thing.
So you talked about how you're looking to find the right location. How were you able to find your location?
Yeah, it was easy for us because we were first in the state. So we were like, okay, what's the best land to grab? So we grabbed Manchester, West Hartford, and Milford. Milford was the one that didn't pull out as massively as the others. It's on the Boston Post Road. It's in the Whole Foods Plaza. Like all the main meat and potatoes of that research looked right. It had a combination of residential and commercial, tons of traffic. And what's used for another thing that's used in real estate is anchor. So a grocery store is considered an anchor, something that is very complementary, very symbiotic with these types of QSRs, the quick service restaurants, to tie yourself to. So it had the good anchor, had the good traffic, but it didn't have other complementary frequency shopping neighbors. So what we found as we started getting better at picking locations is it's not just about your traffic and your area and your anchor, it's about your other neighbors. Are they complementary to you as well? So we do well where there's a lot of frequency shopping, like a package store, like Total Wine and More, Petco, Marshall's, other food spots. So dessert pairs well with food, obviously. So our Milford location has Whole Foods and then a bunch of like clothing stores, boutiques, really good brands, strong reputation, but not complimentary because you don't go to Sephora every week, right? You don't go to Banana Republic every week, a couple times a year, maybe. People go to package stores multiple times a week. People go to Shake Shack multiple times a week, Chick-fil-A, Panera. Those were the more complimentary brands that stood out in the plazas that we crush it in versus the ones that we go flat in. So that's a huge piece of it. The demographics, the anchors, the archetype of the people, talking to the real estate agents, talking to the locals, getting your own instinctual feel for it. Being close to highways is huge, obviously. That will show up in the demographics and the traffic data. But then a big kind of X factor is imagining your target person's day and what are they doing in their day that pairs well with what you do. And are there those types of services and brands around you, close, convenient, physically?
So how much franchise do you actually own? All the stores combined, is it?
Seven.
7.
Waterbury needs to get built out and launched, but we have 7 licenses locked in with 6 locations currently operating. Yep.
So how does that work? How are you able to manage your time to make sure every location is running?
It's all about the people, man. I know that's like a super oversimplified answer, but it deserves the emphasis because it's just the core of it. And obviously, simple is beautiful, right? There's this amazing woman named Ange who was my first hire. I sat down with Starbucks. She was the only person I rated as a 5-star out of the applicants that I received. Called a bunch of people, made a bunch of interview appointments. She was the first one. Applied for shift lead at Crumble Cookies Manchester. And I had hired a general manager separate from her who had experience, who had the resume. I had a gut feeling that he was going to go down pretty quick once I saw him in operation. So I tapped her on the shoulder the day before opening and I said, hey, I'm going to give you the title of head shift lead, give you another $1 per hour because I see some potential opportunity for you. And in the back of my head, I'm like, this guy's going down. I need somebody next. And she was honored by it, pumped up about it. And she's like a super in the trenches, lot of love, a lot of discipline, ride or die type of person and type of leader. She's now my regional manager over the 4 crumbles. So she's the most important operational piece to sustaining the crumbles. She knows the business inside out and backwards, upside down, and everything in between. And she's like working the business in her sleep. She doesn't sleep much. So that's just like a little story about the operational person that makes this super possible. And there's a ton of good managers and a ton of good regionals out there when you get to this scale. So you need yourself an Ange type of thing. We have 2 operating partners over those 6 locations. So Aaron and I are both, and we operate the stores physically and we spread ourselves out over the ones that we do. I'm the main operator in 3 stores. I have equity in Waterbury and West Springfield, so I'm the small guy in that one. And then I'm the main operator of 2 PLAYA Bowls, where Aaron has 1 currently. And we're signed for a bunch more as well. Territories I won't mention too early, but so people and systems are those 2. I'm actually excited to level up my game on that. To be honest with you, my biggest struggle is prioritizing and balancing what facet of the business, what location, what skill on myself am I working on that is the most leveraged to spread out into the organization in the best possible manner, as impactfully as possible. So I'm doing a training pretty soon with a guy named Dan Martell, who's all about systems and standard operating procedures and how to build the people in your business. So something I'm gonna brush up on heavily myself soon. Yeah, one thing I have to leverage more of is documentation and standard operating procedures. Right now it all exists on disparate Google Docs and text threads and all that. So leveraging that through platforms like Trainual, they help you centralize all your videos, your documentation, your standard operating procedures. So yeah, there's a lot of complementary tools like really good HR platforms out there that'll pull those things into a space where it's user-friendly enough and quick enough to not take too much time from you while you're stabilizing the sales and the fulfillment of whatever's being ordered. But I would just so over-index on creating enough incentive and enough connection and enough, that's pretty much it, for your people. And then your people help you build the system. To me, it's like people first. I think it was The Culture Code, was a book that my partner recommended to me that had this case study of different models of startups. One of them was like the STAR model. One of them was the commitment model. And then the other was like the systems model. The systems model just had the best technology, the best platforms, the best processes. The STAR model focused on recruiting the best talent, the best people, and getting all those people on that team for that startup. The third one, the commitment model, focused on building bonds between the team members. They didn't have this huge budget to go get all the top talent, or they didn't be over focus on the tools. They just focused on how they work together, like being cohesive and unified as a unit. And in the case studies, the commitment model, after iteration, they won every time. It was really the bonds of the people that outperformed the top talent and the top systems, because commitment and unity outlasts the more logistical side of things. Because what a business is, a group of people, and the people that are willing to go the furthest and have each other's backs, they prove to outperform the other models, at least in that scenario. So that's why I pretty much over-index on that. How do you keep it together while you're operating 5 locations? Thankfully, sales have never been a big problem for us just because of how early we got in and that we picked the right brands and we got the right locations. That's a different issue that I can't really speak to as much. Then that person has to focus on getting sales in the door and branding and marketing and all that. We just had to keep up with all the sales and stabilize. The problems I've faced are how to maintain everything, how to optimize everything, not how to survive and scrap and claw to get people in the door. So my style in general and our scenario just made me focus on taking care of our people, building a ton of loyalty, connection, resonance, culture. I focus on the why a lot. I make sure I know what all of my key team members and entry-level team members want out of their life, and I speak life to it. I want to integrate what we're doing as a genuine stepping stone towards what they want. Tying those things together, being that connected with my people has been the thing that has made it possible for me to hold on tight to this rocket ship for this long, because it hasn't been easy operationally. There's a lot of times where, as blessed as it is, I've wanted to cash it in. You know what I mean? Having those connections with the right people has just been what's made it all worth it and what's made it all stay stable. Yeah.
So you said your first place you opened was in 2021.
Yeah.
So did you think you would ever scale up as fast as you did when you first started in 2021?
I knew I signed up for 3 right away. So I knew it was going to go, unless something tragic happened, that scale was going to happen no matter what. And I knew that Troy doesn't make mistakes with where he invests things. So to be honest with you, it'd be more fun to sit here and say I was surprised, but we knew that we had hitched ourselves onto the right idea and that it was just ready for takeoff. Did I know that Buckland Hills, Manchester was going to sell between 16 and 20,000 cookies a week for 4 months and reach the level of revenue that it did in its first year? Not really. We were number 1 in the country on many days and many weeks, and probably a month or 2 here and there throughout the first phase of grand opening and within the first year. Did I know that we were going to be busier than anybody else in the country? No. So that was a cool shock factor and something that we didn't quite see coming. And then once all that was happening, that's when Troy was like, hey, let's sign up for 3 more. And I was like, whoa, brother, you're going to put me in the grave. So let's call in some reinforcements. And that's how we got Aaron. Aaron and Troy knew each other from church. So to your point of scaling, it made sense that we signed up for 3 more right when the first couple were ripping pretty good. But if I zoom out and I say, at 30 years old, did I think I was going to be operating something, doing that much sales over and be a franchise owner of 3 units by the time I'm like 30? Like I did not see that happening. That was a good twist that life threw at me.
So you said there was times where you were number 1 in the whole country. So
yeah,
what made your store different than the others?
I'll be real. It happens to a lot of stores in their grand opening phase. An area is really hungry for Crumble to be there, and they're waiting, and then when it happens, everybody's just right on top of it. So it's pretty common as long as you have a really strong location, and it also came down to the earliness as well, right? So we were the first one in Connecticut, so all the Crumble heads in Connecticut were driving to Methuen, Massachusetts to get their cookies. And we picked a good plaza. Christmas rolls around, and all the Connecticut people that wanted Crumble, they finally had a spot that they could go to, so they busted our doors open. And with Crumbles, one of the biggest, probably the biggest factor that determines volume is how far away is that Crumble from the next closest Crumble. The ones randomly out in these tiny little farm towns in the Midwest crush it because there's no other Crumble there. But everybody on their phone is, I want it. There's a bunch of people that are aware of it. Nothing's really happening except for cow fields and cornfields. And so that's like the one thing that everybody gets to gravitate towards. So yeah, geo-isolation is a big factor, and Manchester, Connecticut was geo-isolated. Like the next one was, again, Methuen, Massachusetts when we opened, so everybody just flooded there. But then, to be honest, it wasn't just the early timing, it was the power of grand openings and locations again, like we had said before, because West Farms did the same thing. West Farms was selling 18,000 cookies a week right off the rip when there was 4 stores in Connecticut. So even with other stores in Connecticut, West Farms hit that top chart as well. And then so did West Springfield because of how central it is to everything. And that was even, I think, 6-9 months after West Farms opening. Crumble had hit Massachusetts a lot by the time West Springfield was open. And it wasn't like this rare thing in New England at the time. That one just was the power of the space itself.
I just got a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
So in my book, Realistic CEO, Tony, he talks about the LBW, the long, lonely, boring work. So can you tell us about the LBW in your career?
Absolutely. So it took me almost 10 years from when I dropped out of school and got really hungry to learn and launch and do something on my own to become a franchise owner, right? Dropped out at 19 years old and wasn't operating a store till I was 28 or 29. So that was just a lot of self-discovery, a lot of trying to learn drop shipping, private labeling. Do I want to be a meditation coach? Is this sales thing going to work out? I'm reading books, I'm watching YouTubes. I'm on a platform called Stumble Upon, following business interests. That was like that before the feed was a feed on Instagram and all that. Like Stumble Upon was where you picked your interest and you hit stumble and it would give you a random YouTube video or a random article. It was like the feed before the feed. So that was an LBW phase for me. And then now this kind of, we have a lot of interesting stuff going on, so I don't want to pretend like it's boring, but there's a lot of the boring work that I have resistance to. That is the optimization work, that is the devil in the details type of stuff. And the more I develop a better relationship with that, the more I design for it, get aligned with it, and dive into it and dance with that resistance instead of let it win, the more my systems and my people are supported and the more, holes we can plug. And let me see, man, the LBW, like, yeah, that's big right now. Do we delegate pieces of the LBW? But you never fully can, because you'll always have your dose of it that's unique to you and that you'll have to face. So me, I'm just like facing its resistance and diving in and showing up regardless, as many moments as I possibly can, and learning to dance with it instead of fight it. Yeah, for me, in more specific terms, that shows up as like documentation, reports, taxes, standard operating procedures. Like I'm like a people guy. The more procedural stuff is where I have to face that LBW and really just lock in.
I notice anytime I ask that question, the boring part is always the paperwork. It's never like the actual work. It's always just doing like the extra paper to make sure that the business is.
For sure.
Yeah. So the last question is, what's one fun fact about yourself that nobody really knows?
Shoot. Goes hand in hand with the meditation thing. The one that's coming up for me right now is that there's these things called float tanks, the sensory deprivation tank. It's like where you go in there, you lay on top of the water, and it has so much Epsom salt in it that you can fall asleep on the water and you won't drown. Wow. It's like a meditation on steroids. I've spent over 1,000 hours in a float tank. And for me, it was when I got hooked on just exploring the idea of awareness and consciousness itself. And doing so in that type of setting provides such a opportunity for a deeper clarity and a deeper self-awareness. It helped me really align with myself and with the world around me. So float tanks are like this weird, super niche thing, but it was super transformative and super helpful for me getting aligned with myself.
Thank you for coming on today. I appreciate it.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, Michael, this has been awesome.
Yeah, I'm speechless. I learned so much. So I really do want to thank you for that.
That's awesome. You're inspiring me through this conversation to tie all the principle and the practical and spit it out in a more concise way, because I tend to rant. But this was phenomenal, man.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Awesome.
I want to thank all of you for all the support that you have shown me in this past year of my journey of becoming a realistic CEO. Ways that you can support even more is by going onto my website, realisticceo.com, and ordering your copy of the Realistic CEO book. See you in the next episode. Peace.